What if the problem was never about the people who upset you? What if the real battlefield isn't out there, but in the quiet corners of your own mind? You see, it's easy to blame the world, to point fingers at the loud, the rude, the manipulative. It's easy to say, they ruined my day, they made me angry, they shouldn't treat me that way. But here's a harder truth. What if the storm you keep blaming on others is one you've been carrying with you all along? There are people who enter a room and bring with them a strange pressure, a weight you can't explain. You feel it in your chest, in the way your shoulders tighten without warning, in the sudden need to escape even though no one said a word. These people haven't insulted you, haven't looked at you with disdain, haven't done anything, and yet something inside you flinches. Have you ever wondered why? Why someone else's mere presence could wake up something you thought you buried a long time ago? It's not about them, it's about you. That uneasiness is not an external problem. It's an internal messenger, a signal that something inside you has not yet healed. You were taught to behave, not to understand. You were told to smile, even when it felt like screaming. You were trained to avoid confrontation, to package discomfort with politeness. But suppressing emotion doesn't make it disappear, it makes it volatile. And one day, that emotion doesn't knock politely, it erupts, and it usually does so when the wrong person walks in at the wrong time and unknowingly presses the wrong button, the one you left unguarded for years. You think you're being pushed to the edge by others, but the truth is you've been living on the edge already. Their presence doesn't create chaos. It activates the chaos you've kept disguised as composure. That's the catch. You aren't reacting to them. You're reacting to everything they awaken. They don't destabilize you. They expose how unstable you've been under your surface calm. But you were never taught to listen to discomfort. You were taught to silence it, and so you've built an identity that looks peaceful, sounds rational, appears composed, but is built on buried frustration, postponed truths, and years of emotional debts that were never paid. You think you're upset with the person in front of you, but you're really angry at yourself. Angry for every time you didn't speak up. Angry for every time you said, "I'm fine," when you were cracking inside. Angry for the person you've had to pretend to be in order to survive environments that never asked who you truly were. This isn't about learning how to stay calm. This is about learning how to become whole. You can only stop being triggered when you finally listen to what the trigger is trying to teach you. Because you can't achieve peace if every irritating face has the power to destroy your mental state. You cannot live freely while giving strangers unlimited access to your emotional wiring. This isn't a guide on how to tolerate annoying people. That's superficial. Tolerance is temporary. It holds until pride is hurt, until your values are crossed, until someone touches that tender part you tried so hard to hide. What you need isn't tolerance, you need integration. You need to understand the parts of yourself you've been disowning, the ones that come alive every time you lose your center. Those people you can't stand. They're not distractions, they're reflections. And here's the question most people don't want to ask. What part of you benefits from keeping those difficult people in your life? What part of you feeds on the emotional spikes, on the chaos, on the validation you feel when you're wronged? It sounds strange, but it's real. There's a part of you that is used to suffering, a part that finds comfort in blame, a part that would rather hold onto resentment than face the discomfort of taking full accountability for your reactions. That part is afraid, not of them, but of who you'll have to become once you can no longer use them as an excuse. That's the part of you that needs to heal. The deeper you go into your own story, the clearer it becomes. Most people who disrupt your peace aren't enemies. They're messengers. They show you the soft spots, the wounds that never closed, the truths you keep suppressing because you're afraid they'll change how you see yourself. And here's the raw part, sometimes the unbearable person is you. Sit with that. Let it sting if it needs to. Think of all the times you've been someone else's tension, the times your sarcasm cut someone who was already bleeding, the times your silence screamed louder than words. The times your need to win an argument made someone else feel small. You're not innocent, none of us are, and the moment you realize that is the moment you start to grow, because blaming is easy, evolving is not. Every time you're triggered, you're not being attacked, you're being exposed. The ego wants to scream, but I'm right. The heart wants to whisper, but what am I still carrying? There is power in choosing the second voice. Because the ego wants war, the soul wants freedom, and freedom only comes when you stop fighting battles that don't belong to you. And here's the paradox no one wants to admit. The more you try to control your environment, the more power you give it over you. Because the need to control is not strength, it's fear, the need for everything to go your way, for people to behave, to speak gently, to walk carefully around your triggers. That's not emotional maturity. That's emotional fragility. True strength is sitting in the same room with chaos and not absorbing it. It's being able to see someone's disrespect and know it has nothing to do with your worth. It's not getting hooked by their tone, their looks, their energy, because you've finally made peace with your own. And yes, people can be toxic. People can be selfish, dismissive, manipulative. But what matters more is whether you mirror them or master yourself. The moment you match their chaos, you validate it. The moment you become what you hate, you lose the battle, without them even trying. This is emotional asymmetry, the art of not dancing to someone else's rhythm. Not because you're better, but because you've grown. You don't need to prove your peace. You don't need to argue to protect it. You just need to be so rooted that no wind shakes you. The kind of person who doesn't flinch every time life pokes at the scar. The kind of person who sees a storm coming and knows, I've been through worse, and I didn't just survive, I rebuilt. This is the invitation no one sends you, but you desperately need, to stop rehearsing your triggers and start rewriting your patterns. That conversation you keep replaying in your head, the one that left you restless, angry, ashamed. It's not about them. It's a chapter of you calling for closure. You were not meant to react like a puppet every time someone pulls a string. You were meant to respond with intention, and that doesn't mean you become emotionless. It means you become conscious. The real test of who you are isn't in how you act when things are calm. It's who you become when someone wants to provoke you and fails. Because you've changed. Because the fight they're trying to start isn't a place you live in anymore. You don't need loud affirmations. You need quiet awareness. You don't need to be unaffected. You need to know what's worth your energy. Not everyone deserves access to your nervous system. Not every situation requires your commentary. Some things are meant to pass through you like wind through open windows, not ignored, not repressed. Just observed and released. And that's the ultimate power, when you walk into the noise and remain untouched, when your calm no longer depends on the silence of others, but on the clarity within you. That's when you stop reacting, and that's when you start living. But there's another layer to this that we rarely explore. It's what happens after you've chosen not to react, that strange silence, that void. That moment when you walk away instead of arguing, when you breathe instead of biting back, when you look into someone's rage and feel nothing, not pride, not revenge, just space, and for many, that silence can feel more terrifying than the chaos they walked away from. Because when you no longer react, you're also left without the story you've told yourself for years. You see, your reactions didn't just come from pain, they came from identity. They told you who you were. I'm the strong one. I don't let people walk all over me. I speak my mind. But what if your strength was never about volume? What if your worth had nothing to do with how many comebacks you had loaded and ready? That space after you've stopped reacting is not emptiness. It's the start of a new self, one that doesn't rely on conflict to define its edges, and in that space something else happens. You start to hear yourself more clearly. The version of you that isn't frantic or defensive or trying to prove anything, just you, pure and unfiltered. The voice that's been drowned out for years beneath the noise of validation, performance, and pride. That voice might be unfamiliar at first, quiet, cautious, But if you listen long enough, it will show you truths you've never had the courage to say out loud. It will remind you of the peace you've always longed for, but never believed you deserved without struggle. Because that's another thing we've been programmed to believe, that peace must be earned through suffering, that it's a reward for surviving chaos, not a birthright available right now. But peace isn't something you chase. It's something you uncover. Once you let go of everything that isn't really you, every reactive habit, every petty argument, every insult you stored and kept like a trophy, every time you chose to be right instead of being free. Let them go, one by one. You don't need them anymore, and when you begin to live from that place, something profound shifts. You stop seeing people as enemies and start seeing them as expressions of their own pain. You stop seeing disrespect as an attack and start seeing it as unconsciousness, not to excuse it, but to understand it. Because when you truly understand something, you stop being ruled by it. This doesn't mean you become passive. It doesn't mean you accept mistreatment. It means you respond from wisdom instead of wounding. It means you know when to speak and when silence is the loudest response. It means your boundaries are no longer walls made of resentment, but fences made of clarity. You begin to understand that the loudest voice in the room isn't always the strongest, that the person who always has a comeback is often the most afraid, that the one who walks away without a word isn't weak. They're just done arguing with the version of you that doesn't want to grow. You see, peace changes how you see everything. It's not just a feeling, it's a lens, and through that lens you begin to see yourself differently too. You stop measuring your value by how others treat you. You stop trying to convince the world that you matter, because now you know you matter when you say you do. You don't need someone else's permission to exist fully, to speak when needed, to walk away when necessary, to sit in your own stillness and know that you are enough. And that's when life starts feeling different, not because the world changes, but because your relationship to it does. People still lie. People still disappoint. People still lash out, but you respond like water to fire. You don't resist. You don't absorb. You flow. You extinguish without effort, because you are no longer reacting from fear. You are responding from presence. Presence is the real superpower. It's the ability to stand inside a moment without being hijacked by it. It's the stillness beneath the noise, the clarity in the confusion, the strength that doesn't need to announce itself. And most importantly, it's the realization that peace was never outside you. It was just buried under layers of who you thought you needed to be. And as you spend more time in this new awareness, something even more radical begins to happen. You start to forgive. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. You forgive the ones who broke you, not to let them off the hook, but to unhook yourself from the pain. You forgive the versions of yourself who didn't know better, who stayed too long, who spoke too quickly, who silenced themselves too often. You forgive not to forget, but to free. And forgiveness in its truest form is not a one-time act. It's a lifestyle. It's choosing every day to walk lighter, to stop carrying the weight of people who never asked to be healed, to stop replaying scenes that ended long ago, to stop letting your nervous system live in rooms your body left years ago. And that's when you become dangerous, in the best way, because nothing owns you anymore. Not their opinions, not your past, not the image you spent years curating, just truth, just alignment, just presence. And presence doesn't beg, it doesn't defend, it doesn't rush, it just is, calm, grounded, clear. And in that clarity, you'll start to see what actually matters, not status, not approval, not the last word, but things like rest and stillness and quiet joy and deep conversations and integrity. And love that feels like home instead of a war zone. You'll realize that so much of what you used to chase was just noise and silence. Real silence isn't empty, it's full of truth. And now, you'll protect that silence like your life depends on it. Because it does. Every time you step into drama that doesn't belong to you, you step out of your own center. Every time you let someone's energy dictate your emotional state, you abandon the sanctuary you've been building inside. And that sanctuary matters more than anything, because it's the place you return to when the world forgets your name. It's the place where you remember who you are, but don't confuse peace with numbness. Peace doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't fall apart every time you feel. You still get angry. You still cry. You still feel hurt. But now, those emotions move through you like waves, not anchors. They visit, but they don't stay, because you've learned how to let go. Letting go is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's knowing the difference between what's yours to carry and what never belonged to you in the first place. It's knowing when to fight and when to walk away. It's trusting that not every ending is a failure. Sometimes it's a graduation, and when you live from this place long enough, you start attracting people who meet you there. People who don't need chaos to feel alive. People who speak with honesty, not manipulation. People who respect your boundaries because they respect their own. People who know how to love without possession, how to give without expecting, how to hold space instead of judgment. And those relationships, they don't burn hot and fast like old flames. They burn steady, they glow, they warm your life quietly, and you'll realize this is what you've always wanted, not adrenaline. Not highs and crashes, just truth, just calm, just connection that doesn't require you to shrink or perform. But for that to happen, you have to stop entertaining the people and patterns that make you forget who you are. You have to stop reacting like you're still at war, because the war is over, you won, you survived, now it's time to live like it. That means making peace a non-negotiable. That means walking away from drama like it's poison, because it is. That means standing so firm in your center that other people's storms pass right through you without landing. That means choosing your nervous system over their chaos, your peace over their performance, your truth over their opinion. And that's the final truth. When you stop reacting, you don't just gain peace. You reclaim power, real power, the kind that can't be taken away, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that isn't afraid to walk alone. Because it knows, alone with peace is better than together in dysfunction.